Good evening, everybody. Welcome to First Church, First Center here in New York. I know there's a lot of people on the call. I can't see you, everybody, right now, and there'll be more joining. So welcome, and I always need to remember to welcome those of you who discover us on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. I understand we're going to be able to do more on Twitter in the near future, too. So people find us in different ways, and it's good that we're able to get our message to as many people. We are one of the fortunate centers, churches. We're aware that spiritual centers, churches throughout the nation, not just New Thought centers, but many houses of worship, have been going through a tough time before COVID, and many of them are not around anymore. So we're very grateful that we are able to be here and to keep the message going, keep teaching you about our teaching, keep teaching you about what we call the law, the healing law, the law of mind, the law of attraction, and keep offering our Louise Hay classes too, which we usually call our self-healing class. Some people refer to it as our self-esteem class, self-love class. We've got lots of different names. But whatever it is, we're always teaching you that you can heal your life. So let us begin. Most of you are familiar with Louise Hay, of course. She was one of our most famous students here in New York City. And she was a practitioner. She took the teaching that we teach you and she practiced it. And then she took her findings from her, initial work and put it into a little book. And that became the basis for the book, You Can Heal Your Life, which I'm reasonably confident that most of you have either read or know about. It's one of the most popular books that's been written in the past, I don't know how many years, but phenomenally successful. Anyway, I've been teaching this class ongoingly now since the late 80s when the book was first written. And I've been presenting the material in every kind of group, church, school, institution, hospital. And it's a very basic message that, you can heal your life. So we approach it from different angles every week. Usually there's something in it for everybody. Old-timers, meaning people who have been exposed to the teaching or work with the teaching, they benefit by tuning in and remembering, because we all have a tendency to forget some of these things. And, the point of power, as Louise Hay would say, is always in the present moment. I've had friends who've been longtime students of metaphysics, and they'll say to me, well, I took those classes, 17, 18 years ago. I took them for 3 years. And that would tell me if they took those old-fashioned, and I shouldn't say old-fashioned, but those classes were heavy-duty classes, that they have considered metaphysical thought. They've considered how the law works. But taking a class, 5 years ago, 17 years ago, it definitely would have given you a lot of information, but it's ultimately going to be in the practice of that information day by day if it's going to make all the difference in the world. We're currently conducting a course on Wednesday night facilitated by Solomon, who's a member, and it's around addiction and a spiritual approach to handling addiction. And that's very similar. We approach it from a different angle, but Louise Hay would say all healing is self-healing. And when people come together into 12-step programs, there's a saying that's in all of them, which is, we are going to love you until you can learn to love yourself. So the 12-step programs, if people stay with them long enough, bring people to a realization that self-acceptance and self-approval are the keys to all positive changes, which is exactly what Louise Hay said. The 12-step programs will bring people to that same place, again, if they stay. Part of the challenge in many of the programs are people, they don't stay long enough. You've heard the expression before, and it could be true for this class as well, this broadcast, which is don't leave before the miracle happens. The thing about new thought, you can have a new idea, and you come and you might like a class or two and get all revved up and excited. I'm thinking of Kathy Lee Griffith. You have your vroom, 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 whatever it is that she talks about. You might get all excited about the teaching, but the thing is, it's the application, it's the daily practice. It's the willingness to stop when you're in the middle of a negative spin and you're having a bad day, and having the willingness to say, I could see peace instead of this right now. And you could stop yourself. I mean, you do. You have the ability to stop yourself in any given situation at any moment and take a different course. It's important to learn how to do that and make that a part of your daily practice. Because otherwise, what we're doing is we're just playing out old tapes over and over and over again, and old resentments. And you have an idea about your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, your husband, your child, and it's very difficult, for you to be in truly a new moment where all the glory of God exists when you're holding on to a resentment or an idea or an opinion you have about somebody else. So that's why Louise would say the point of power is always in the present moment. Because in that new moment, you are able to see a person as being glorious. You can see them as being divine. You can see them as being a child of God, a child of the universe. And you can begin to realize as you get in this teaching that you are that also. Here's the thing to understand. Louise Hay taught, you came into this world as a beautiful being, a child full of joy and laughter, and you would cry and you would laugh, and you even as an infant would have your needs met. And, you had all these adults crooning around you because you were a little baby, and you were getting a lot of attention. And she said, as we become older, we learn how to behave. We learn how to stuff our feelings. We learn how to put on a mask and do all kinds of things. But what we're wanting to do now as we come together is figure out how to move forward with our lives and how to get unstuck. When you come into a class like this and you're an adult, you have already gone through a process that some people call entrainment. People call it different things, but basically what it means is you grew up in a family somewhere and you were given a bunch of information, and you probably religious things were passed on to you. A lot of things were passed on to you, and much of what was passed on to you now presently gets in the way of you expressing yourself happily, joyfully. So we look at all of that. I had a little lesson I put together tonight, some notes. I'm going to go through some of them for you. Jimmy will get me a sponge here so I can move through it. The question is, what is self-esteem, and what is your own personal assessment of your worth and value? Self-esteem, the author wrote, is your subjective sense of your overall personal worth or value. It's very similar to self-respect. It describes your level of confidence in your abilities and your attributes. Having healthy self-esteem can influence your motivation, your mental well-being, and your overall quality of life. Having self-esteem, having a low self-esteem is problematic. The elements of self-esteem, having positive self-esteem, is a person who has confidence, security, not worrying about everything and having faith, having a sense of belonging, feeling competent. So if you're loving yourself, you're going to have a sense of self-worth, self-regard, self-respect. This author said self-esteem tends to grow as we mature. Now you come in as this little baby, full of light and wonder, but very soon you start learning the rules of the house and all of that, and you enter into your younger years where you question yourself and question everything because you're starting to be given a lot of programming. And so why is self-esteem important, and why is self-acceptance important? It's really important because it's the key, Louise Hay said, to all positive changes. She says it's really tough going forward when you have all this critical stuff going on and where you have a sense that you don't feel good enough. Having low self-esteem impacts our decision-making process. It impacts our relationships, our emotional health, and our overall sense of well-being. Here's 4 characteristics of having healthy self-esteem, which I'll share. If you have healthy self-esteem, you have a pretty good understanding of your own skills and abilities. Sometimes when we're presenting these classes, we ask you to consider taking an inventory of yourself. In 12-step programs, they have several inventories, one of which is the 10th, and that's where you take a daily inventory and you think of yourself like, okay, here I am, I'm like a store, what's working, what's good about what I do, and what isn't working. We come back, right back before that, we can go back to the Socratics where Socrates was saying, know yourself. Because we want to get a handle on what it is that we're thinking and what we're doing. Because our thoughts are things. So if we want to heal our life, then we really want to start to get a handle on what our thinking is. Every Thursday night I ask some point in time or another, what's it been like being you? And all I'm really trying to get you to do is to start to think about your thinking. Is your thinking generally up? Because if it is, that would tell me that if your thinking is really on high, you just think of it, Emerson, hitch your wagon to the stars. If your thinking is generally optimistic and on high and good and you're a lifter, if you're really that kind of person where your thoughts are, you're constantly guiding your thoughts upward, then you're developing what we call an affirmative approach, a positive approach, Louise Hay would say. So that's part of the inner work that we do. So the keys and characteristics of healthy self-esteem is having a good assessment of what our thoughts are and how we're approaching life, and learning to turn the negative into the positive, learning to stop yourself mid-sentence when you're thinking the negative. I've had so many students for so many years, one of which I remember, an elderly British lady, she would go, stop, 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 or next. She would either go stop or next whenever she caught herself thinking a negative thought or projecting a negative thought or judging someone. So that's a key, having a good understanding of what you're doing. and never with the point behind it always is you do it not to be critical of yourself, just to become aware of what you're doing. In a similar way, you hear me often talk about Louise Hay's statements about the word should, because she said wherever you're doing it, you're making yourself wrong, or you're judging yourself, you're judging somebody else. So we want to assess what our inner dialogue is like. We want to catch ourselves and stop ourselves when we are going in that direction. And as you do that, you'll begin to replace the negatives with the positives, and your self-esteem will be raised because and then you're not part of the problem, you're really part of the solution. You're lifting your thoughts high. The next characteristic, this author said, the ability to maintain healthy relationships with others will increase dramatically as you learn to have a healthy relationship with yourself. So one of the sayings attributed to Louise Hay is an affirmation, which is, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. And many of the exercises are done with mirrors, and I would say try that one out for yourself. And when you go into the bathroom or wherever you are, look into your own eyes and spend a moment or two. Say, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am, and see if you can connect with that. Or you, in the mirror, you'd say, I love, accept, and approve you exactly as you are. And you might notice what comes up for you. If you can do it and connect with it, it can be very powerful. It's also valuable when you do it and then something comes up and says, oh no, you're like the way you look, or something comes up that represents a negative thought. That's very valuable also, because that's like your subconscious giving you, you're striking gold. It's like hitting gold. You're seeing an area where you're judging yourself. So that's just a little, it's powerful to do it. If you work with the mirror, we've done groups before working with mirrors. I've done them for years. I could tell you many stories. I won't tonight, but that mirror, I've seen grown men and women, come to tears who cannot put that mirror up to their face and say that simple statement, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. So positive affirmations, noticing your self-talk, correcting your self-talk, turning those conversations around can be very, very helpful. Another key to building self-esteem is having an understanding of the things you need and learning somehow to ask for them. Sometimes we find ourselves in relationships, and if we don't want to rock the boat, so we don't ask for what we want or need, and then we wind up having resentments. And so it's, as you're learning to love yourself more and more, you're going to have the ability, hopefully, to ask for the things that are important for you. This article states that people with so low self-esteem tend to feel less sure of their abilities, and they may be less inclined, they'll doubt themselves more. And as a result, they're reluctant to try new things. They doubt whether they can reach their goals, and people with low self-esteem undoubtedly have issues with relationships, and they project a lot of things upon other people. So one thing, if you hang around here for long, we're always going to tell you it's really never about the other person. I know people come in counseling and they're troubled with what the other person is doing. It seems like it's always about the other person. And we've had talks here in the past. Barker famously had a talk about how to change other people, and he filled the house apparently, and only to tell them that you can't change other people. But you can change yourself, and when you change yourself and your inner world starts to change, then your outer world mirrors what happened. The expression is as within, so without. So as your consciousness is lifted, as you get out of those conversations that are negative, and as you elevate your thoughts and your opinions of yourself, as you love yourself more, Louise Hay would say everything in your life begins to work and work better. So in that sense, there's no such thing as an idle thought. When you're sitting by yourself watching your TV at night or wherever you are, all those thoughts that are streaming through your head, they bear fruit. Now, it's been pointed out to me over the years, it isn't any one thought, but if it tends to be negative, that's going to get reflected in your life. And if you know that that's going on, then it would make sense to find ways to, I'll say hijack that conversation, to turn that conversation around. And there's loads of ways to do it. You hear me talk about them Sundays and Thursdays. For one thing, you can just look at who you hang out with and how you spend your time, what you listen to. Could be music, what you watch, what you read. When I was being taught, we didn't have all the smart TVs and all the devices and things. But I was plainly told by one of the best teachers around, he said, in this day and age, you can commune with some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. And, if you start reading like Emerson, for example, which is not easy, but if you do, you'll bring yourself to a different place in consciousness, and you commune with people who think those kind of thoughts. It'll lift you up and bring you to a different place. And if you consider, the ideas of prosperity and wholeness and health and self-love, and if you dwell with these ideas, they're going to start to be reflected in your world. Today, you can turn on TED Talks, you can go to YouTube, you can read books. There's so much really wonderful material that you can utilize just to lift your thinking up. Emerson was famous for saying, hitch your wagons to the stars, which is really, he's talking to you about me. He's talking to us about think the bigger idea, change your thinking, keep thinking about the bigger idea, keep thinking about the expansive idea, keep thinking about the healing idea. If you go low and you keep going low and you do ain't it awful and you keep doing that, then, it's the law of mind. You will draw to yourself a reflection of what it is that you're constantly focused upon. So as we consider a little bit more about self-esteem, this author came up with a couple things that I don't usually think about, and said that there's many factors that can influence self-esteem, and I don't know if it was a he or she, said that your self-esteem can be impacted by your age, by disability, by genetics, and by illness. And see, I don't usually think of it that way, but they make a point. I haven't been very sick in my life. And I've heard people tell me before, though, when they're very ill, it's very difficult for them to have, such positive expectancy, and it's tough to do that for them when they're, feeling really poorly. So that's a point that I had to think about today. Or if someone's dealing with some severe disabilities, they can really be challenging for them. So this author said there's many factors that can influence self-esteem, and these are some of the things that they thought can impact. They said also, if a person's out of work and they don't know where the next meal is coming from, that can impact their self-esteem too, and that seems to be valid. And then they next got into what we talk about all the time, which is thought patterns and consciousness. So those are the factors. We're always talking to you about, and as I started out throughout most of tonight's presentation, you have the ability to change your thinking. You might have had the same experience with some person for the past 20 years, or a whole group of people, but there's a famous expression here in our teaching, which is principle is not bound by precedent. Now, you may not have heard the word principle before used this way, but in New Thought, when they talk about principle, they're talking about God. They're saying God is not bound by anything that's ever happened before. So this principle is the way life responds to you. It's not bound by anything. So you might have had a type of thinking going on for the past 5, 10, 20 years. And so your life has reflected that kind of thinking, but you also have the ability to think a new thought. You have the ability to be in a new moment. You have the ability to make a decision. Barker, one of our founders, said in a book, The Power of Decision, you have the ability to start it all over again right now. Tonight, or any point in the day, you have the ability to start your day over. That's a slogan from the 12-step programs. It's never too late to start your day over. So this is the type of thing we learn to do here. We learn to stop ourselves, and we learn to take a pause, and we gently and lovingly put ourselves back on track. Even if we might have been really tough on ourselves all morning, all night, we really can be really rough on ourselves. So one of the gifts that Louise Hay offered was, she says, look, start treating yourself like you would your best friend. She says, we're really, really rough on ourselves. When we do our inventories, we're not really trying to find out what's wrong. We're just trying to assess, what's working and what isn't working. And we're doing it not, again, to be critical, but just to okay, this doesn't work very well. I'm going to be mindful about this. I'm going to release the need to say this. I'm going to release the need to do this. I'm going to release the need to hang out with these folks. I'm going to not do this gossip thing. I'm not going to participate in this. I'm going to be about what we call our Father's business. And that's going back to the story of Jesus with his mother. When he reaches maturity and she wants him to go do something, and he said, what? I need to be about my Father's business. Any of us who are engaged in trying to align ourselves and live a spiritual life, we really want to step out of those states of consciousness where we're all caught up in the mess. We really want to be, we want to be leaning into the healing activity where we see the God, we see the good. A metaphysician or someone who's taking the healing approach, who's developing healing consciousness, is here to see what's possible, and here to see what's good in others. We're here to understand that every encounter is a holy encounter potentially. We're here to, wherever we find ourselves judging someone is wrong or bad or judging ourselves, we're here to just stop and realize that whoever it is, including ourselves, everything and everyone is a part of this one undivided thing, okay? This unitary field that Deepak Chopra talks about. We're all part of it. And everybody is waking up in it. In our lifetimes, we're becoming awake. We're waking up. I was taught years ago that, and I pass it on to you, that you are an individualization of this divine substance. And so I pass it on to you. I don't know if it'll hit or it'll land, if you'll get it, if you'll appreciate it. You are an individualization of this divine activity. And we're all in this together. The thing to understand, too, is everybody's in a different place. So we got really no business trying to mind anybody's business, because we understand wherever they are on a continuum of growth and evolution is perfect. And you might say, but God, they're doing some terrible things. And I would say, yeah, okay, well, I've done some pretty awful things, and most of us have, and we move forward. All of us are moving forward. And there's no time for judgment. There's no place for judgment. What we're really about is learning to love ourselves and embrace the message of self-acceptance and self-approval. We keep coming back to that. Self-acceptance and self-approval in the now, Louise famously said, are the keys to all positive changes. So we're not about the problem. We're really about looking past the problem at the greater reality that there is God. And, I had a great practitioner years ago who did some work for my center. And he'd listen, he'd go into a counseling session with people that might be all upset. And his name was Elijah, and he'd start out by saying, there is God. And then after that, the rest is kind of meaningless. It's just like, okay, people are doing what they're doing. You might have been messing up, and you just stop. And you breathe in, and you exhale, and you center yourself, and you recognize and know that there is this divine thing. And you are part of it. And you can create in that new moment peace and joy and happiness, and you can create, you can know that there's divine healing, and there's the presence of God here, and that you are, if you invite it in, there will be guidance, because each of us are connected to this thing that we can't really describe, but it's there, it's a part of you. So, we slow down, and we invite Spirit in for guidance. And we're not about criticism. We're not about making people wrong. We're really working on the most important person in our world, which is ourselves. Louise would say, when you really love yourself, everything in your life starts to work. So if Agatha were here, or some of the old timers, they would always say, look, I'm too busy working on me to be overly concerned with what other people are doing, because as taught by another teacher to me, this spiritual experience, this life that we have is so brief, goes by in a snap. And I haven't got time for the nonsense, haven't got time for the pain. And really, I was also told by the same individual, it's like a school. We're here to learn so many lessons and embrace them. So I don't have time to be a victim. I don't want to live my life as a victim. There's no reason to live your life as a victim. In the book, You Can Heal Your Life, Louise makes a statement somewhere, we're all victims of victims. She's never really meaning that in a true sense, because you really aren't. What she was trying to do is explain the people who have come before me or you have passed on to you a whole body of things. Again, you came in as a perfect little baby, but people passed on a lot of information from, it could be your great-great-great-grandparents and all, but, you got part of it. And it could be part of the dogma from their churches and their belief system and all that, but here we are now. We're in a new moment. This is a new type of place. It's a spiritual center that will remind you that you're whole, you're complete, you're perfect, you have everything you could possibly ever need. And we release the need to be critical and judgmental of ourselves or others. And we're committed to being in a new moment where we know and we can recognize that all is well. So I think I'm going to stop there.